All right. Well, welcome everybody to LinkedIn Tuesdays. I'm happy to have you here today. Today we're having Kurt VandeMotter, who will be talking to us regarding LinkedIn from a recruiter's eye. So put your information in the chat. Let us know where you're watching from, what title you're looking for, job title you're looking for, your LinkedIn URL so that you can download the chat later and network with others. All right, so please note that this event will be recorded and the recording may be on the Career USA YouTube channel for others to view in the future. By participating in this event, you give consent for your name and picture to appear. Comments in the Zoom chat window do not appear in the recording. So please use the chat box to enter any questions that you may have for Kurt as we go throughout his presentation, and I will ask him your questions. A little bit about Jeff Morris. He founded Career DFW in 2008, and then he attended a session in Washington, D.C., where he saw the greater need to help other job seekers around the country. So then he started careerusa.org in 2012. He also wrote the book, What I've Learned About Your Job Search That You May Not Know. And if you run into him, he'll always have some copies with him. You can also buy it on Amazon. He's led the North Dallas Plano Career Group since 2007, and he's been a member of the PIT Crew since 2017. As for me, I'm your interim host while Jeff is recovering, and I'm a job seeker as well and a volunteer. With that, wanted to let you know who joins me every Tuesday. I've got four distinguished LinkedIn professionals who join me, and that's Locke Alderson, Terry Sullivan, Ruth Lipsky, and Kurt VandeMotter. As we know, we've got on the careerdfw.org calendar, there are several different events that you can attend via Zoom. Some are also in person, but three of them to note here. We've got today, the LinkedIn Tuesday at 1 o'clock Central Time. Tomorrow, we have the PIT Crew, which is the practice interview team at 1 o'clock Central Time. And then on Friday, we have at 9:30 a.m. Central Time, the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group. So the practice interview team meets at Christ United Methodist Church in Plano, Texas. It is in person only on the first, second, third, and fifth Wednesdays of the month. It is via Zoom on the fourth Wednesdays of the month. Hence tomorrow, if you are outside of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, you can join via Zoom. And that is where somebody will present their a job that they want to interview for, and then there's a panel of volunteers who will interview that person and give them feedback so that they're ready for that interview. So you can join the PIT Crew in person or online. On Friday, we have the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group. And this week, Mike Ray and Pete Hernandez will be the guest speakers, and they will be talking about identify, research, and network into target companies and how you do that. So hopefully you can join us at 9:30 a.m. Central Time on Friday. Also, we have LinkedIn groups. We have Career DFW and careerusa.org on LinkedIn. We have over 15,000 members in the Career DFW LinkedIn group, and we also have several members in the Career USA group. So make sure you join those LinkedIn groups. In addition, for careerusa.org, we have our YouTube channel. This is where you will find all of these previously recorded sessions when you click on the different playlists and view on the full playlist. And this is a sample of what you would see for LinkedIn Tuesdays. So anyone who has it recorded, so that would be Ruth, Kurt, and Locke, we will have those on there. Terry Sullivan's presentations are not recorded. If you are not receiving emails about our workshops, you can join the Career USA mailing list. You can scan this QR code or send an email to Career USA subscribe at groups.io, and you can get all of the latest information on who will be speaking and when we're having the sessions. Please note that Career DFW is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We have no full or part-time employees, and we survive on donations. So please consider making a donation when you get your next job. If your new company makes matching donations, we are registered. And if you do not see us listed, let us know who they use. So before I turn it over to Kurt, I wanted to give you a little bit of background on him. Kurt has a proven ability to match talented individuals with the best opportunities in unique roles and niche industry segments. His intuitive and outgoing style helps Kurt immediately connect with diverse business leaders. His coaching approach is very open, personable, and interactive, which differentiates him from other employment executives. The same passionate approach is what makes him the ideal speaker to galvanize and give positive energy to your next meeting or event. His 30 years of experience provide your audience with engaging real-life stories and robust content that can be smartly applied to further executive level learning. Recently recognized by Forbes as one of the top search firms in the US, nominated by his peers, candidates, and companies. His experience spans corporate America, nonprofits, family-owned business, and much more. For the past 10 years, he has dramatically expanded his career coaching as an owner of Linked Executive Search, a company that focuses on hard-to-fill positions. And with that, I will turn it over to Kurt. Kurt, you're on mute.
Looks like you're in Italy, Patty. You were talking about a beach, but you've got a beautiful view behind you as well.
I am. I'm in for Nozze Cinque Terre. Have you been?
No. Are you actually
You should
there?
go. Well, I've been there, but no, I'm not currently.
Uh,
I
I
wish.
was I was hoping you were there right now and we could all just have a little savory of what you're dining on tonight. Well, listen, thanks for the introduction. And it looks like we've got, a robust group again today. I'm sorry that you have to spend time with me today. And I mean that. I think that, I know we'd all rather be at work or, doing something else, but I hope that this time is productive for everybody on the call. I'm pretty casual today, and I apologize for that because I'm a poll watcher. And so I've been trained to be a poll watcher, and I just got back this morning. I was down in South Dallas at a poll and got kicked out 3 times. The sheriff showed up. But we took our notes and we turn it in and we just try to make one little issue or point at a time. But it's a fun thing to do if you're looking for something to do during the election. There's a lot of needs for poll watchers and other volunteers. But what we want to talk today about is how do recruiters use LinkedIn, and specifically LinkedIn Recruiter. So let's start with number one. Um, Patty read my background. I've been in this business search for 16 years. I was in corporate America for most of my career. I started, I'm 65 years old. So 16 years ago, I was about 45 years old. No, I was not. I was about 49 years old. And I have never looked back. And so um, for many years, I worked in corporate America, came out of the beverage industry, PepsiCo, Dr. Pepper, 7 Up, and then went into technology with AT&T and did startup technology companies, all in sales, marketing, operations, never in HR. So I'm not an HR expert, but instead I'm a hiring manager. And that's what makes that's one of the differentiators is me as a hiring manager in the sense of differentiating me from my competition is that I hire as if I was hiring for myself. I look at resumes as if I was going to talk to this candidate for a job that I had to hire for. Those are the kinds of things that I look at before I present candidates to companies. So let's talk about recruiters, because in these calls, a lot of times people want to understand a little bit better about what's the difference between you said I told you I'm a retained search executive. What are the other kinds of recruiters? And so the other recruiters out there are internal recruiters, and those are the people that work for big companies. So AT&T, American Airlines. I'm just throwing out silly names. Big companies and sometimes smaller companies have internal recruiters that recruit for their company. When you are looking for a new opportunity and a recruiter calls you, it's okay for you to ask, what kind of recruiter are you? Are you an internal recruiter working for the company, or are you an external recruiter? The two types of external recruiters are contingent recruiters and retained. Contingent recruiters, a company might have a vice president of sales job open, and they could go out and find 3 or 4 contingent recruiters to work on that search. In that case, nobody gets paid anything. Everybody's got the same job. Everybody's out trying to shake their trees and find the right candidate. And the only time anybody gets paid in that model is when a recruiter brings the final candidate that gets hired to the table. And they generally get between 20 and 25% of the salary. On the other side is a retained search. I'm exclusive, so I don't compete against anybody. When a company calls me and wants me to do a search, if they've got internal recruiters, those recruiters turn off all their search. And if they get any resumes or candidates, they send them to me. And I get paid a retainer up front. And then I get paid based on the results of that search, and all that's outlined in a contract. So I compete against the Corn Ferries and the Santon Chases of the world. And that's one of the differentiators with me again, is that I'm a single shingle. Forbes picked me up 6 years ago as the top search firm in Texas and one of the top search firms in the United States. So that's what my marketing is today for the most part. I don't do a lot of selling to companies. I do a lot of these presentations, and I think it was outlined. Patty said, if you ever need a speaker, I do a lot of different speaking engagements on a lot of different subjects, but my main job is recruiting. So those are the 3 type of recruiters. Again, anytime a recruiter calls you and you don't know who they are, or you've not listened to their message and looked them up on LinkedIn before you call them back, it's okay to say, can you give me a little overview on your recruiting business or your recruiting exercises? And they may say, well, I work directly for the company, or I'm an external recruiter. Good to know, because the way you communicate with these people is a little bit different. Contingent recruiters, you got to work really quick, because they're going to start sending resumes the minute they get that search. Okay. I can remember doing a contingent search when I first started this business for about a day and a half. And the second day at about 4 o'clock, the company called and said, we made an offer to somebody today. So I lost a day and a half that I could have been playing golf, and instead work for free. I'd rather lose money on the golf course than do work for free. So that's why I'm a retained search. Retained search people spend a little bit more time typically with candidates, and we have a tendency to listen to the whole story because we've been hired to fill or solve a problem, and all that data may not be on your resume. And so I try to listen to candidates when I'm doing a search to try to identify and learn and hear about what they've done in their career and the problems that they've solved that are similar to what we're trying to do. So I don't know if that's information that people haven't heard about before. Hopefully that helps. Patty's my wingman today. So if you've got questions about any of the stuff that I'm talking about, I'm here for you all today. So stop, interrupt, throw a note out there. And
There
Patty,
is a question in the chat.
here we go.
So, question for you. Why would a company go with a retained over a contingent and vice versa? Is there any benefit to the company or the candidate?
Great question. So I do in real good times. So first, let's also lay out the land right now. If some of you have got a question about what's going on in the recruiting industry and our company's hiring,
Yeah.
that always comes up. It's been coming up for the last few months. Let me assure you that the market is very slow. Companies are not hiring right now. I hope that changes after November 5th, but I think that what's going on realistically is there theoretically could be a lot of changes to corporate governance and taxing and other things. And I think that companies are just waiting to see what that looks like and where they want to make their changes. There have been a lot of layoffs and not a lot of hiring. My answer to that is that I think that a lot of companies are even waiting to go deeper until they find out what the outcome of the election is, or they may start letting go of senior people and relying on more junior people in their organization to do those jobs and to fill in depending on their cash flow and so forth. So that answers that. What's the difference? So why would a company hire a retained search executive? Well, number one is I've got 16 years of filling CEO, CFO, CMO jobs. My specialty is really I spent about 60% of my job is in the family business. And so if you're a company, I'll give you an example. You're a company. I worked with a company down in South Texas, and they were a wholesale, retail, hardware, meaning like shovels and picks and fences, 125 years old. And the second generation were all in their 60s and they were getting ready to retire and they needed a new CEO. So, yes, they could have gone out and found 6 contingent recruiters, but they had never been through this process before. They were deer in the headlights. I had to walk them through every step of, I spent time in their offices 3 or 4 hours before we even started the search. I did a lot of coaching. And I don't know you're going to get that from a contingent firm because they're moving so fast and they're not getting paid anything that they work in this model of the hamster just running more so than, and not all contingent, more so than working on the other side of it. So um, that's my own theory is experience, not necessarily databases because I start every search with a clean database, but certainly with experience. And I could give you all kinds of examples of times that I've had to interject and there was a time in Atlanta, a company was hiring a COO, and we had been negotiating with this candidate for about 4 months. And I finally called the CEO and I said, I'm going to release the candidate today. We had started the negotiations off at about $200,000 for a CEO for $100 million law firm. In 3 months, we moved that negotiations all the way up to about $1 million. But when it came to, he was a lawyer and he was going to be the CEO. When it came to writing and doing the work and being able to read the contracts that I didn't write, but I hired a lawyer to write it for him, he wouldn't make the changes and he'd engage and he'd tell me what he wanted to do, but he wouldn't do the work. And we would go around and around and around. Give me your bullets of what do you want me to interject? And he couldn't do it. And so after 4 months, I finally said this to the CEO, this guy's you're gonna hate me and you're gonna hate him even worse because I don't think he's gonna be able to do anything that he says he does because he's not a doer. So unfortunately, the guy was only making about $180,000 living in New York, had a chance to move to Atlanta, but he blew it. So don't be that guy. Does that answer the question?
I think it does. There's a follow-up for that regarding your comment about how the market is. And is the market similar for nonprofit leadership roles?
Very good question. I think it is. I just think I think it is. But I don't do a lot of nonprofits, so I haven't seen a lot of stuff. But I think just in general, the market's in a real slowdown right now. You listen to the jobs reports and they're very good and they're very robust, but a lot of the jobs are going into McDonald's and Starbucks and places that not necessarily everybody on this call is looking to land. And so I don't know that the market's as robust when you move into more senior executive roles, whether it be profit or nonprofit.
Okay. And then can you discuss how to best get on the radar of recruiters?
Great question. These are all great questions, everybody. Just keep them coming because you're doing my job for me. So the bad news is, Patty, is that most recruiters don't take calls with candidates unless they're conducting a search that's right on or what you have the experience to do or what you've done. And the reason is because we don't get paid by candidates. And let's stop there that if you get a call from a recruiter and they say that they will help you find a job, They generally, their price tag, I've seen them all over the map. I haven't seen as many lately, but they're anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000. My encouragement to you and everybody you know is to run as fast as you can, because there's only one person that can find you a job, and that's yourself. Okay. So do not consider paying anybody else to find you a job. I did do that work during COVID for a little bit, and I fired my job and I shut it down because there's nothing worse working for candidates. Because I tell you what I need you to do in the next week. You got to go make these calls. You got to do these. You got to da 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 da. And I come back next week. Did you get it all done? No, my wife and I decided to go to the beach for 4 days. Okay, well then let's start next week. And they're paying me to do this work, and they think that I'm just going to make a call and get them introduced to somebody, and they're going to get a job. And it's not that way. Just doesn't work that way. So, how do you get on the radar? If there are recruiters that you know that you've worked with in the past, absolutely. Those people should know you well, and they should take your phone calls, and they should offer advice, services, and insight for you. If it's a company or it's a recruiter that specializes in a category, I talked about family office, family business, then certainly continue to try to lean in on them and get creative in how you try to get their attention. But do not go to bed crying at night if they don't return your phone calls, because again, they're not getting paid by you, they're getting paid by companies. So this is where creativity does come in. I never send anybody a resume unless they ask for it. So if one of your strategies is developing a list of recruiters and you've got their email addresses and you're sending them resumes and cover letters and all that, stop it. Okay. What I really want you to do is finding a job, and that's why it's a hard job, is because it requires you to work 8, 10 hours a day in some cases, because you got to make personal connections with people. So I would much rather have you find the names of those recruiters you want to work with or talk to or have a conversations with. Send them an invite in LinkedIn. Don't ask them for a 15-minute conversation. They don't even know you. You may ask for 4 or 5 minutes, but then you send them a note in LinkedIn, then you try to connect with them, and then you've got their email addresses and typically their phone numbers. If you don't have their phone numbers, you know the company they work for, you know their name, you can Google it and you'll get them that way. Don't hesitate to leave a phone number or leave a message with a recruiter. Hey, this, if in my search, I would probably make, even though I'm giving you the advice that recruiters aren't the best networkers, I would probably try to make 2 or 3 of those calls every day. I might start by doing my research in the morning, and then some point in the day, I'd have a list of recruiters I want to call, and I just try to call 3 of them, just keep it fresh. Hey, Jack, Kurt here. Just want you to know that I'm actively looking. I know that you do searches in my industry. And if you've got 3 minutes someday, I'd love to catch up with you. You got to sell yourself. Everybody on this call, I saw people popping up, and your engineers and your CFOs and your smart people. But going forward, your job is to become a salesperson. And you've got to learn how to sell yourself. Okay. Remember when you were in college and the professor handed you the big pen and said, sell me the big pen. And you talked about that it was nice, it looked good, it felt good in my hands, it had a nice lines on it. I wasn't worried about it leaking in my pocket, had great colors. It's even a pen that I would give to a friend. That's what you have to do. You have to be able to describe who you are and what you do and what your values are to the organization. How can you add value to their organization? And so try to do that in small doses to try to get their attention. Who else do they know? Another great question to ask every recruiter is, when you're networking, where do you go to network? What tools do you recommend to candidates that are actively looking? Then they may have something that they'd suggest that I haven't thought of, or another recruiter hasn't given you, or somebody else hasn't offered to you in the past. So don't stop trying, but again, don't be disillusioned if they don't call you back. They're not bad people, but they probably just don't have a job that's a fit for your background right now.
Yeah, another question that came up was, there used to be a thick, big red book, the directory of executive recruiters. What
Yeah.
replaced that resource?
Yeah. Google. There's no such thing. I mean, I think you can put into LinkedIn, you can do searches and put in, And that's why we'll jump into another key subject, which is keywords. If you look at my LinkedIn profile, you'll see that I've got a list of keywords: recruiter, headhunter, executive search, search consultant. I've listed all the different ways that you could define an executive search consultant. And I've put that list in there so that you, as a candidate or a company, you know, some people call me headhunter, some people call me search consultants. Everybody's got a different name. So, same for you. I want you to start developing a list of keywords of ways that you can be found. Okay. Where do you get those keywords? I want you to, in LinkedIn, under your picture, there's a summary section or about section. 2,500 characters can go into that section. Okay. And I want that section to be written not like you cut and pasted it from your resume, but I want it to talk about what you've done. And I want you to interject keywords. So going forward, everybody on this call, take the back page of your notebook that you're working out of these days and start a list of keywords that describe who you are and what you've done. You can highlight those off of your resume, but another great place to find keywords is on job descriptions. Everybody on this call is looking at a lot of job descriptions every day. So as you look at those job descriptions, make sure that you're just really quickly, in addition to this is a job that I can do, okay? The second thing is highlight the key words of what they're looking for and make sure that if you've done those, that those keywords are in your profile as well, because that's how we search for candidates is keywords. Companies give us information of what they're looking for. We take the job description, we help rewrite the job description, we highlight keywords, we drop those keywords into LinkedIn and other search tools, and we try to identify candidates that have put that into their LinkedIn profile somewhere. Okay. The other key to communicating with recruiters is that when you do get a recruiter on the line, whether they're calling you because they've got a job or you've got them on the phone, what I want everybody on this call to be really cognizant of is to not vomit all over that recruiter. Okay. And I don't mean to be so explicit, but I know that everybody on this call is looking for a job. And I know that you, in some cases, have been looking for more than 30 days. I know you're anxious. I know you're excited. I know you're qualified. But what I hear so many times from candidates is I will call them and say, hey, I got your, maybe I don't have your resume, but I found you on LinkedIn and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about what's going on in your career. And after sometimes 15, 20 minutes, I have to say to the candidate, okay, do you feel better? Let's stop the motion right now. And let me tell you what I'm looking for so that we can have a really productive conversation. So I don't want you to be that person. Take a deep breath. Make sure you're taking that call in a quiet place. Don't be doing it going down 75 at 80 miles an hour. Have a notebook ready so you can take questions. If a call comes in and you're going down the highway and you don't know who it's from, and you're in job search, it could be an employer, it could be any number of places. You want to take that call so bad. If you can, slow down, get over to the side of the road, take it, and then decide if it's a spam or not. But when you get that person on the call, listen very proactively as far as what they're looking for. Okay. Let me reverse the engineering on this a little bit. One of the ways that I work with companies is I always ask them, what are the problems that you're trying to solve? What are the 2 or 3 problems that you're trying to solve? In 6 months or a year, how will I know that this executive that we place in this job has been successful? How will they know? What will they have done that makes them successful? And the reason I don't want to know what those are is because as I talk to candidates, I ask them questions. Have you done this? Can you give me a story about this? Have you, I'm working on here's a job you can all advertise to your network. Anybody know anybody? Send them my way. I'm working for a local real estate company in the commercial real estate space. And I'm looking for a property manager. I'm looking for a property manager that has worked in retail, big roofs, big retail, big box retailers. They've got about 50 properties. 2 hours from Dallas by flight is the furthest that they go, but they've got big roofs, they've got flat roofs, they got big parking lots. And I need somebody that can analyze and interpret leases. Okay. So when I get a candidate on the phone for that particular role, that's exactly what I tell them. These are the problems I'm trying to solve. And then I hope that the candidate will come back and say, great, I appreciate that overview. Let me give you an example of what I've done in those 3 areas. Okay. So they've taken the time to listen. They know what the problem is I'm trying to solve, and they can direct their answers specifically to what they've done, what their accomplishments are, so that we can have a really productive conversation in the first 15 minutes. Now, the next question I ask, and I always ask it up early, is a question you all hate. Penn, you haven't started laughing yet. But that question is, what's your salary? What is your salary target? Candidates hate that, right? Well, I ask it up front, and here's why I ask it up front is because your time is just as valuable as mine. Okay. And as anxious as and excited as you are to have a recruiter on the phone, and as excited as anxious as you are to be able to tell your wife that you had an hour call with a recruiter today, if I only have $150,000 to spend and a bonus of 50,000, and you are coming off of a role where you're at 225 and a bonus of $75,000, we may not have the best fit. And I don't want to waste your time. So I want to know what your number is up front so that I can tell you we're okay. We don't have to worry. I've got plenty of money to spend. This is okay. And you don't have to worry about it from that point forward, because as a recruiter, I'm not trying to jack up the price to get you in there, but I am going to make sure that you get a fair deal. And that's one of the things that as a recruiter, you should be getting as a service to make sure that the recruiter is at this point. It's kind of difficult because you think about the real estate market, and you really can't have a real estate person that works for the buyer and the seller because there's stuff that goes on there, right? But in a recruiting piece, I'm the one that's communicating to the company. Okay. And you got to trust me that I'm going to go to the company and say, this is a candidate that was, I know you only have $200,000 for budget, but this is a candidate that has knocked it out of the park. And we're going to have to figure out a way if you want this candidate to get closer to the 250 number and a little bit bigger bonus. This is where the negotiations start. But I, as a recruiter, your recruiter should be doing that for you. But again, if you come off of I was on the phone a couple of weeks ago and I'm a storyteller if you can't tell. I was on the call with a candidate, and he called me. It was a blind call. I took the call. We had a nice conversation. He was in the construction business, and they were building doors and door frames. And that business is huge right now. Window replacement and doors and all that. It's a big business. And he had a very successful career. And I said, so what's your number? Now he was with a company for 8 years. He had been very successful. He left because he and his wife decided they wanted to have a baby. He was older in his career. I don't need to know all the details, but he left his job, and now he's getting ready 9 months later to come back, re-enter. What's your number? 450. Okay. You're a sales guy. That's a big number. Okay. Let me make sure I understand. Your number is 450. Can you give me a breakdown on that? Because you're doing really well. I don't want to question why you left your job, but you're making a lot of money right now, and you're selling doors. And he said, well, what do you really want to know? And I said, what's your base salary? Oh, I only make $125,000 base. But the company that I've been working with, we've been throwing it and blowing it out of the park. So I'm making $300,000 in bonuses. Okay, I get that. I get that. If I was going to try to place him, I would have to do a lot of coaching on what can you really withstand, or what's your you were at a big number. Will you go to 200 base and 100,000? So you have to understand our role in this is tricky and slippery at sometimes too. But the more you can give a recruiter, the more information up front, the better. And you might give ranges, okay? Um, you can always throw it back on the recruiter. Can you give me an idea what their benchmark is, or what their and I'm very honest at that point. I'm like, sure, I got $150,000 base and a bonus on top of it. Boom, I'll tell you. But then a lot of times candidates come back and they're like, whoa, that's way too low. Well, that's why I want to know what you're making. Give me your data now so that we can figure out whether or not the company is willing to accelerate that. The company that I was working in South Texas, their goal was about $250,000 total compensations for a CEO. Okay.
Wow.
We negotiated 300 and a $300,000 base and $1 million after 5 years as an exit, so that he could go in there and know that he can retire from this company, because he's got a $1 million bonus coming at the end of 5 years. Okay. So if you give the recruiter the information and you've got creative recruiters that you're talking to and working with, we'll figure it out together. But my point is, give us the numbers. Does that help? I'm sure there's questions, Hattie.
Yes, there are a couple of follow-up questions. So the first one is going back to the keywords. I have heard different approaches for keywords in the summary section or the about section. Some tell us just list titles or keywords. Some say write a paragraph with 220 characters. What resonates better? That's the first question.
Okay. So what resonates is writing stories and telling me what you've done, but write that story and then go back and interject all your keywords into those stories. Okay. You can put titles, but titles are so crazy these days, people. I don't want to deviate from that. So that's what I want you to do. It's 2,500 characters. I want you to really use those keywords, but you can use keywords in other parts. You can put it into the different jobs that you've had as well. And that's why I'm suggesting to you that if you've got a list of keywords, it's 200 keywords, smother as many of those throughout your LinkedIn profile as you possibly can, without being silly about
Yeah.
it. Okay.
All right. Great. Thank you.
Yep.
Another question is the elephant in the room. What role does age play in your search for the right candidate?
Doesn't at all anymore. I spoke to a group here in Dallas last week, and I'll tell you that never has a company said to me, "We want a young person." I get more frequently. We really need somebody seasoned. We need somebody that wants to work 10 more years. Okay, so what is that? Is that somebody that's 60 that will work till 70? Or is that somebody that's 50 that wants to retire at 60? You can see that it's convoluted. So I do ask those questions. Do you have a sex preference? I can ask that question to a company.
Yeah.
Okay. I will never repeat it again, but they don't. 99% of the time, that is not even a part of it. Age is not a part of it. um Race is not a part of it. None of it is a part of it. It really doesn't. And I think that the tables are turning, and I think that you're going to see over the next 5 years, not because the millennials don't want to work, but I think that we're going to go into this huge transition after this next election. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm completely wrong. But I think that one of the things companies have been holding back on is mandating candidates to start coming to the office. Some companies have figured it out, so there's a good balance and they're able to achieve the best. And I've heard more and more companies that we hire all remote and we're very successful. There's a lot of companies that don't want that. And we know that as older generation, I hate to put us in a category, but I would rather go to an office. So we got a lot of momentum. I want to build camaraderie. If I'm managing people, I want to see them. I want to touch them. I want to hear what's going on in their personal life when it's appropriate. I want to have coffee with people. I want to walk to lunch and talk about their kids. So I think that there's a lot of differentiators going on, but I really do believe that as older people in the community, we're going to have an opportunity in the next 5 years that we haven't seen in a long time.
Great. This is a LinkedIn question for you. Using the free version of LinkedIn, is there a solution for InMail which comes with the paid version?
That is a question I don't know. Have you heard that, Patty, from somewhere else? I don't have the answer to that.
I'm gonna have to look that one up. I know that with a paid version, right? I have the LinkedIn Premium. I have InMails that I can send to people that I'm not connected to, but I'm not sure about the free version.
Yeah,
Um,
so So real good question there. So so LinkedIn, um, quite honestly, I mean this will be the last quarter that I'll even be able to demonstrate LinkedIn Recruiter because I'm not going back to it. They charged me an exorbitant amount of money for it. They change the platform every week. I have to relearn how to use it. They try to sell me more advertising. It's gotten out of hand. So I'm going to go to not the free version, but I'm going to go to a lower grade than LinkedIn Recruiter. Um, I've always said that the free version is as good as any of the other versions, but I didn't know that in the free version you didn't get in mail, and that is important. Now, the question that I have though, Patty, is that can you not send in mail or can you not receive it? I don't know because those
You
are two
can't send
different.
it.
You
You
can
can't
set
send. You don't have the chance
You don't have an
for
option for
in-mails.
in-mail for a free version.
okay, okay, and even in LinkedIn Recruiter, they limit me to the number of in-mails that I can send, and I can that number can grow. Great information, Laura. Thank you very much. The number grows if I get a better return rate on in-mail responses. Let me give you all the numbers on that. Pretty scary. Only about 8% of candidates reply to in-mails. 8 to 9%. Now, the good news is that my numbers, not because of what I do, my numbers are a little higher. I'm in the 18, 19%, but those are awful. Okay. I can sit at my computer in an afternoon and send out 100 messages. But remember, generally, I only get about 18 or 19 back replies. So if you're trying to, and Laura, that was great information. If you're using LinkedIn and you're not using the advanced version of the one for pay, and that's okay, you just have to be a lot more creative as far as being able to use their search tools, find people, get their name, and then try to figure out how you can get a hold of them somewhere. But we've got so much technology going for us these days that, between friends, between other, people that you do know that may have contacts with those people, you stretch it, go as far as you can. But remember, you're all salespeople. And I go back to the point that if you've got a name and you've got a company name, I do it. I drop it and I go right to Google. I find the company name. I call the number. I try to use the automated response so that I don't have to go through an admin. Because sometimes if I'm searching for candidates out of a company, I may call that company 12 times in an hour asking for Janet, Bob, Joe, Sally. Okay. And if you've got an operator answering that phone after about 2 calls, she's like, "Who are you and why are you calling?" Asking for all these different people. So if you can use the automated response, and if it's after hours, punch in their number and or their name and get an extension. Um, there's no fault, no foul on sending an email to somebody and it doesn't get to them, right? You got their email address wrong. But there's all kinds of technology out there to find the nomenclature for email addresses. Go to a company's webpage, look at who's doing sometimes there's a contact for the publisher or somebody that's, taking customer service. Sometimes those email addresses you can piggyback on to see first name dot last name. Um, but again, there's no foul. So if you send it to John.block at company name and it gets blocked or gets sent back, then try first initial, last name. My point is you got to be creative, but don't stop trying to make those contacts.
Can I
Laura, you
just
have
share
something?
that? I just wanted to say that those of you with the free version for LinkedIn, what you could do is just put your message in a request to connect to that person, and then they'll get to decide yes or no, but just tailor a message to them in that request to connect that, hey, I'm interested in XYZ position you have available, would love to connect, send you my resume to stand out from the crowd of applicants, or something sweet and to the point, or sell something, one sentence that sells you as to what's great about you, why do they want your resume, something like
I
Right.
think
that.
you only
Make
get
sure
5 connection requests a month.
that you
Mm.
put your email address and your phone number in that, and make sure that. See, here's another. Yeah. So and yeah, but writing a great message, Laura, is absolutely the key to that, because this is not where you want to give them 7 sentences about who you are and what you've done. They've never met you. And so they're less likely to reply. But use friends as well. You all continue to build out your networks, because the bigger your networks get, many times you click on a name and there's a common connection. Um, if you've got a huge network, some of the time those common connections don't even work for me. I try to call somebody and say, hey, you're connected to Bob. Got a great job for him. I don't expect that you're going to give me his email address or his phone number, but could you send this note to him? So we have to be really, really creative as recruiters, and you have to be just as creative as candidates to try to get us where we're at that sector.
So Kurt, going back to your comment about, RTO and remote work, somebody asked, what's the problem with remote? If you're hiring the right people, they'll be productive anywhere and connect with their teammates regardless of being virtual, right? From a
Yep.
company's perspective, why is being in person so important? Now, I had mentioned that they've got real estate to pay for. So
Yeah.
that's what I said, but obviously you can chime in.
Well, I think it's the real estate. I think companies all, maybe not, I don't, that's a pretty generalization, but I think in all companies that come together, even if it's only 2 days a week or 3 days a week, if it's not every day, I think the hybrid situation is getting to be bigger and bigger. You live in a city like Dallas, and Dallas is not New York, and it's not San Francisco or Los Angeles, but it certainly feels like that sometimes with the traffic. So I think that there is a great way to add quality of life back to candidates. I just know that there continues to be a lot of emphasis from companies, especially in certain industries that want to see their employees. They want them to come to the office on a more regular basis. But there's nothing wrong with remote. Um, I placed a CFO with a company in Midland, Texas, an oil and gas commercial real estate company, and the guy goes over there once a week, stays for the full week. The family bought him a house to stay in. But he works from Dallas 3 days or 3 weeks a month, and then he goes over there for a week and he gets everything done that he needs to do, and the rest of it he does on Zoom. So absolutely. Now, I didn't expect that this company would have an appetite for that, because this is a Midland local oil and gas company. But you know what? They had success. One of their employees had moved to Philadelphia because of a family situation, and they told him that they were sorry, they were going to have to let him go and they'd find somebody locally. And then they took a deep breath and decided, well, let's just try it remote for 6 months and see if it works out. The candidate or the employee did so well that when we went into that discussion about, do you want somebody in Denver? Because if I got to move somebody to Midland, you talk about adding a whole nother level of complexity to it. Okay. Okay. Midland, Texas is a nice place, but not if you
Down the
got four
middle
kids
of
and
the
not
state.
if you're raising kids and stuff. So my point was, when we got into that dialogue and they were willing to consider a remote candidate, their candidacy pool went from here to here. Okay. Huge difference. So again, those are the conversations that I'm engaging with companies to try to figure out where and how we put the best piece together to make it a win-win situation for them.
Yep. Another question that came through is, in the process of selling ourselves and our experience, is there a danger of coming across as overqualified for a role?
I don't think it's overqualified, but I think that it is, and it's not lack of confidence or too much confidence, but I think it is just making sure that you're dripping the data into the recruiter or into the company, as as they're requesting it. And you don't do that complete download on anybody. I think that that's where people get misread, is that they don't take the time to listen, and then they don't answer the right questions, or then they talk about stuff that they shouldn't talk about. Um, I'm a big believer, Patty, in having scripted conversations with people. And so I encourage you as a candidate to, highly encourage you to, if you all don't already, to write out your elevator pitch. When you meet somebody new, what is it that you tell them about you? Okay. And I want you to stick to that elevator pitch as often as you can, because it's 30 seconds. You don't have to, normally you say, my name is Kurt VandeMotter and I'm blah, 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 and my name is Kurt. Some of that you can leave off, but there's a lot of times in search that you want to use that when you're going into a first interview and you're nervous and they say, tell me a little bit about yourself. Well, I was born in Ann Arbor and I was raised in Okemos, Michigan, and they don't want to hear all that stuff, but I'm nervous and that's what I went back to. So in using that elevator pitch to do that, to have that conversation, if you're making calls to recruiters on a regular basis, write that out. I mean, I'd even encourage you to use AI today. I use AI all the time to help script those messages to make sure that they're the most dynamic message that you can put in front of somebody. So use AI, but if you know, remember and memorize those presentations. If
Can I just
you're,
Can,
go
can
ahead.
I add, this is Laura Camacho. I'm just, something that's a great tool and a great resource. If you all don't know about it, if you do a Google search for 64 tough interview questions, it's a PDF and the very first question says, tell me about yourself.
Mhm.
And they talk about what they recommend to say. They give a sample and they do that with the same, all the questions that they have on there. Why does the company ask this question and what's a good example? And something that I like to do is just see how you can tell a story about yourself, about who you are. I talk about my soccer, my triathlete. I talk about, coming from California, just a variety of different things and how I tie that into me as a professional. So you want to do some storytelling. And that 64 tough interview questions can really guide you.
So Laura, to build off of that, so there's two types of interview styles. There is a generic, simple, tell me about yourself. Where did you work? What are your weaknesses? Tell me about your strengths. That's just a general interview. Most interviews are conducted in that fashion. Most interviews are not, people are not trained to do behavioral interviewing. Okay. But you as a candidate, if you can learn how to do what Laura just talked about briefly, if you can learn as a candidate how to behavioral interview, you will accelerate in your interviewing. And I encourage you to use the pit crew as an example, but if you can, when they say, so tell me a little bit about yourself, to what Laura just said, if you can build a 30-second, 40-second communication that tells them a story about who you are, what you've done, it gets them engaged. When they tell you, when they ask you a question, so again, most interviews ask really generic questions. But if you know going into this job interview that there are 4 priorities for this role, let's call it a vice president of sales, and they want to expand their sales organization. They've got to reduce their time of sale. They want to open new doors, and they need somebody that can read a balance sheet and has managed a P&L. You know that those are their priorities. Throughout the interview process, you want to tell them specific stories about what you've done and how you've done it as it relates to those. So, somebody might say, so, what's your biggest weakness? And you might go into a story about what you've done on a particular subject that it answers their question about what your biggest weakness is. So you didn't avoid the question, but they get so much information about you and what you've done, and it's right on target as far as what they're looking for. Does that make sense? Behavioral interviewing from a candidate perspective is incredibly powerful. When I coach my candidates, I coach every candidate, whether I might have 5 candidates going into the interview, I coach them all the same. And that is one of the heaviest things I coach them on is, what their 5 priorities are. So if you haven't written out a story of how you've managed people, how you've reduced headcount, how you've, increased morale, how you've done some of these things, because these are the 5 priorities, that's what they need to hear from you. Okay. Highly, highly important. The last thing about interviewing that I'll throw in there is that many candidates end an interview with one really silly question. Can you tell me what the next steps are? And that's the worst question that you can ask. Everybody on this call, I want you to write it down. The best question you can ask is, I've really enjoyed this conversation today. Are there any questions or concerns that you've got about my background that would inhibit me from getting an offer from your company? Okay. Now that may be a little advanced because you're not at the point where they're getting ready to offer you a job, but you're interviewing with the manager that reports to the CEO. Is there anything that we've talked about today that would eliminate me from getting a recommendation from you that I'm the right candidate for this job? And then you shut up. I wish you, Laura, you are a great candidate. I just wish you knew how to um, juggle swords while standing on your head. Well, gosh, you know
No
what?
problem.
I'm so glad you asked that question because I'm working on it. I'm training. Look at the cuts on my hands. But the point is as silly as it sounds, you put the ball back in their court. If you ask them what the next steps are, the recruiter will call you. Um, when will I hear about what the next steps are? We'll be in touch when it's time. Those are ask the hard question. Is there anything we talked about today that would eliminate me from getting the next interview, a job offer, whatever it might be? Highly recommend it.
Yep. I call those hesitation questions,
Yep.
right? So why are they hesitating and moving you forward or hiring you?
Yep.
Another,
And to that point is this is where candidates blow it. I mean, I've had candidates that get to that point. They've been with the CEO for an hour. They're going to get a job offer, and then the CEO kind of sits back and he says, "Do you have any other questions?" Well, could you tell me about your vacation policy? Done. That's not what he wanted to talk about. If
yeah,
you would ask a question about something that is intricate in his business, that is the wrong question to ask at the end of an interview. Okay. And I'm sorry, but I've lost candidates, meaning that I've had to go to the second, third, fourth candidates because the top candidate blew it in a final interview with the CEO, asking the last question, you know, what's the bonus plan? She had all that data from me, or he had all that data. Why do they go back and ask the CEO? Okay. It's the wrong time to ask that question. Okay.
yeah. Going back to your discussion earlier about it being a slow job market, somebody else said, I'm starting to lose hope in the Florida job market. Are there parts of the country that are more favorable in terms of growth? What is the best way to approach searching outside of one's region?
Well, I think that it's important at that point to kind of and I think that within the southeast, there's a lot of areas that are robust. I think Florida's been hit obviously because of the hurricanes and the weather that has impeded that area. I think that's a big thing. I don't know if companies this far, I mean, it's just recently happened, are making a decision not to move to Florida. Florida is a great place to do business. It's they're very friendly from a corporate perspective. But the other markets that you might look at is you might go up towards the Panhandle. There can be growth up in that area in the Tallahassee, or up towards Atlanta. And then I think as you continue up that region, the Knoxville, Hendersonville, or Knoxville and Nashville area are on fire. Texas is on fire. Um, I think those are some really robust markets. But what I would do is select a market or two and then spend a couple of days digging into that market and identifying what the roles are. Who do I need to network? What does it look like? Is it more robust? Is it going to give me some energy? And then you can selectively manage around that. And it depends on what industry you're in as well. I mean, if you're in a tech industry and if you're a coder, you can probably do that anywhere. But if you're in the tech industry and it's a telecommunications kind of roles, the hubs that those are going to fall into, and they're likely not going to be in Jacksonville, Florida. They're going to be in more robust markets. But that's my suggestion.
Great. Another question is, what techniques can one use to show up on the first page of recruiter search results?
Keywords. And now maybe Laura can even answer this question. Patty, you've been on a number of these calls. I think it's just keywords, a robust profile. But when I do some of the searches, it's sometimes amazing what pulls up ahead. So that's why we have to be super creative as recruiters to not just put in. There is something I want to come back to. We started talking about it earlier, and it's job titles. So I'm going to finish this conversation. I want to talk about job titles for just a minute. So So keywords, a full profile. In your summary, in your about section, we forgot this. Everybody on the call, put your email address and your phone number. Make it super easy for recruiters to call or email you. They don't have to use the InMail when they've got all your contact information. If you don't like that, you can use Google Voice.
Voice.
Um, but if they've got your email address, they can't find out where you live. They don't know your children. So it's a pretty safe piece of data to give out, and your numbers will go up immediately because recruiters and everybody using, I would if I've got a search going on and there's 10 people that have given me their email addresses or phone numbers in LinkedIn, they're at the top of the class. I'm going to talk to every one of those before I talk to anybody else because I've got their contact. I can have conversations immediately. I don't have to wait for them to return an email.
Can I also answer the question about how to get to the top? Is that one, you have to have a complete, 100% complete LinkedIn profile. Two, you also need to show that you are currently employed, that you have a, current job. If you are showing that you left a company and are no longer there, then that decreases you. And if you are a premium user, then you also go up to the top of the search list results.
Interesting.
So if you are like most of us in transition, then you put on there that you are looking for XYZ type of position, and that's your most recent job.
Yep. Or you can put a contract in there. You can put a role in, you don't want to lie on it, but to your point, Laura, there's a lot of creativity that you can use in order to mask that. But those are great tips. I didn't know that paid people got put ahead of non-paid versions. That doesn't make me happy, but I guess that's their model, and they're very successful, and they're owned by Microsoft, so they can do what they want to do, right? Let's talk about job titles for just a second, though. So one of the things that candidates, when we talk about finding a job as a full-time job, and it's a hard job, is one of the things that as candidates, I want to make sure that you're doing is that when you have a job that you're going to apply for, make sure that you've taken the time to review that job description against your resume. And that you might reprioritize the things that are in, what your results have been, because they're looking for something that you had in your resume, but it was at the bottom. You didn't have it on your resume, but you've done it. Now you add it back in. Okay. So those are a couple of really, really easy pieces. But keep in mind that there's a lot of junior recruiters out there. And especially when you're dealing with inside recruiters. And the example that I give is if you were a customer service advocate focused on maintaining or reducing churn, and you've done that job, but your job title's different, even though you've done everything that they're looking for, if your job title on your resume doesn't match the job title of what they're looking for, and you get your resume gets in the hands of a 25-year-old recruiter, they're not going to take the risk of taking your resume into their hiring manager because he's been very clear. He's looking for this, this, and this, and not this. So the only place that you cannot lie about your job is in an application. So again, I'm not provoking you lie about anything, but if you can change your job description in your resume, or in your resume, the word of what you did, the title, you can match it to what the company's looking for, your point of acceleration will go up and you'll get kicked out of a lot fewer ATS systems.
Michelle, you had a
raised her
quick
hand.
question?
Yeah, so then open to work on our profile is not a good thing to look at then?
No, I think you definitely put your open to work on if you're open to work, you put that green wreath on and you tell everybody, because you just don't know who you've worked with in the past, Michelle, that may not have a LinkedIn recruiter package or another advanced package. And that, I think, Laura, unless I'm wrong, I don't care who you are, you put that green wreath on. If you're an advanced user or not an advanced user, a paid user, not a paid user, everybody can see that. Highly recommend that if you're unemployed, because, there's, I I've never had a company. This is so funny, especially in the times that we're at. I've never had a company say, I don't want to hire somebody that's unemployed, but I have had a company tell me I will never hire a Republican. And I had to say to them, okay, that's I can't say I understand, but will you give me a list of questions then that I can ask, legal questions that I can ask the candidate to determine whether or not they are that or not? Because I can't legally ask that. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, companies can come to me and they can say, we are really strong on our Christian values. Okay. And again, I can't ask that question, but I can certainly get somebody to talk about it without asking it. Okay. But that other Republican Democrat question, the lights my head lit up. I was like, I don't even know how to go there. So, um, but yeah, enough.
Thanks for answering the question about the open to work banner. I know there are some people that have hesitations about
Good
putting it
enough.
on. And it's important that it's put on just so that everyone knows. If you only say open to recruiters, that's only for the recruiters who buy the LinkedIn recruiter package. You're missing out on at least 60, 70% of other recruiters who
That's
could be
right.
looking for you. Okay. What is your take on companies that help candidates get through the ATS, like JobScan and other companies like
Yeah,
that?
this came up in the conversation the other day, Patty. And I didn't know a lot about it. I guess there's two different tools. One's JobScan, and then there's another one out there. And the audience agreed that it's really not a really productive tool. I think the things that keep people out of ATS is again, remember that a hiring manager or an HR director can build an ATS any way they want to. But I think that job titles kick you out more often than none. Not filling out a job application all the way, answering other questions. Even if you don't want to answer that salary question, put it in there. It may be a long shot. You're filling out an application. Not, probably 5% of the people that just fill out applications all day get their job from an application. So, and then I think some of the other things that are silly, I've heard it. I don't know if I believe it because I haven't ever gotten it validated from an HR manager, but I've heard where things like if you have a Yahoo address, that makes you old.
Yeah.
I can't
Like
validate
they
it.
said,
I
if you
don't
have
know.
AOL or any of these from,
Yep.
25 years ago to not use them.
But I
But
can't validate it. But I just think, answer the questions, filling it all right. If you can, make sure your job titles align with what they're searching for. And I think all those things will improve it. But man, once you find a company that's hiring and you filled out the application, that's when the work starts, right, Patty? Because
yeah,
now you know the company, you know the position, and you've got a network of people that you're working with, and you've got a network of people that you're connected with, and that's when the mass messages start going out. Does anybody have a contact here that I can get a hold of? Does anybody know anybody that works at this company? They've got a job open that's a fit for me. You don't have to give them a copy of the job description, or you don't have to give them a copy of your resume. You don't have to give them anything other than there's a company that's hiring and I'm looking for contacts that work there or used to work there. Somebody that used to work there a year ago, amazing contact. Would you ever go back to work again? Would you ever go back there to work again? Great company, bad company. What are their biggest challenges? Um, you know, just some basic questions. Who's the hiring manager? What's he like to work with? What's she's like to work with? Um, those are amazing people. If you can get them on the phone, they'll give you all kinds of information and can make introductions for you occasionally as well.
a couple of other questions. I know we're almost going to time and you
Yep.
didn't even get to show your LinkedIn recruiter package.
No.
I heard from a recruiter that salary answer of $0 will automatically filter you out. You must give a dollar answer that falls inside the pay range. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
That probably is correct, but that's impossible because you don't know those pay ranges. And so I would never put zero in there, but I might, depending on the role, I don't want to say make up a number, but you got a pretty general idea. And if they're asking for that information, you got to put a number in there. So just, you know, don't put a number in there that you can't live with, is I guess my point. If they come back and
Yeah.
say, we want to talk to you, and you said that your base was $150,000, but you really want $400,000, don't bait and switch them, because you weren't honest.
Yeah, I think there have been suggestions like, hey, it's a negotiating tactic, right? You don't want to put your number out first. But to
Yep.
be fair, you need to be in a range. So
Yep.
give a range if you can, or
Yep.
whatever. Another question is how long can one have the dates on last job till present after being laid off? Can this go to last month of severance payout, or 6 months, or like what's like a general rule, would you say?
You can do whatever you want. Okay. There's no necessary rules. It's really just an ethics question. If
Hmm.
you were let go a year ago, you haven't worked for the company, there's been no compensation exchange, and you still have it on as present, then when you get somebody on the phone, you got to explain, well, I really left here. Because
Yeah.
anytime they look at a resume, I mean, I constantly have to take companies through the candidate's history. Why did they leave? What did they do? Did they fire? Did they get fired? Did they follow a hiring manager? What was the reason? So, um, you know, people want to know. So now you're going to have to answer them.
What are some other examples of savvy questions to ask when being interviewed by a recruiter?
Yeah, so I think certainly to understand the role that they're filling the best you can is key. But I think that other questions you can ask them is, is this the first role you've ever filled for the company? What do they like to work with? Are they is it a growing organization? You don't know a lot about the company yet because you haven't had a chance to do all the research, or you'd have answers to all these. So a couple of big questions. What's the biggest problem they're trying to solve? What keeps them up at night? Um, those are thoughtful, big questions. Um, if you jump into more of this, what's the salary for this job, or how many weeks vacation do I get? Um, Keep those for later. There'll be plenty of time to have those conversations. But I think anytime a candidate can get the recruiter to start talking about the company and the job is a really good idea for candidates, because you can take notes on all kinds of things that you'll be able to use in interviews, things that you'll be able to use in emails, things that you'll be able to continue to reinforce with the recruiter. All of those things come into play.
Yeah, great. And then I think another question that somebody else had is regarding, I know we've got like 2 minutes left.
Yeah, that's okay.
So many questions. So going back to when you were saying that person was interviewing with the CEO and they said, don't ask about next steps. Should we ask about the future company growth, other things?
Oh,
Would that make sense or not?
100%, 100%. Um, those are all really good questions. Okay. If you haven't gotten to any of that, and you've not gotten any information on that, and you're wrapping up a conversation with the CEO, and he's got, he says, do you have any other questions? Absolutely. If you haven't discussed, so, today you talked about your biggest challenge being here. What do you see as a future growth in this particular sector? Or where do you see the organization, or how do you see competition um, pricing that product versus what you're pricing it as today? So if you've got an intelligent, great question you want to ask, any of those are great questions. Just don't ask the vacation or the salary. I mean, can you tell me about the salary for this job? Well, you should have known that before you got to the CEO, I hope. I mean, if you don't, then you're working with a bad recruiter. Because in my case, you'd never get to a CEO without knowing it. But then I would always coach you as a candidate, do not talk about salary. I've got that covered for you.
And then one last question to ask you before we wrap it up is, what would be a better listing of your contract/temporary jobs on the resume, all together in a single section, or keeping them as separate entries?
Separate entries.
Okay,
Yep.
great. Wow, guys, we were at time. We have all the questions that we asked you, and I think I probably missed one or two. So, Kurt,
Yeah.
Thank you very much for the
Thank you,
informative
guys.
session and all of the great questions that everybody asked. Just as a reminder, if everybody can save the save the chat by clicking on the three dots that's next to the title. If you have Windows 10, down at the bottom, there's a little caret, down arrow caret. You can click on there to save chat. Then you have all this great information so that you can network with others. And yes, hopefully you can join me next week for LinkedIn Tuesday, where I will have Terry Sullivan back. And again, his sessions are not recorded. So hopefully I will see you at another careerdfw.org session here in the future. And everybody have a great day. I will stay on for another minute or two and stop the recording so that you guys have a chance to download the chat.
Great job,
All
team.
right.
If I can be a help, don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you.
Okay.